I come from the corporate world. I was promoting the value of credit cards. I've sold the virtues of the Barbie doll. I've taken E-Trade public. So how does someone like me come to stand in front of you today? And the reason is all the work that you've done in your field. I am here because a lot of health issues were in my family, and I started making the connections on health and environment, and I decided I had to make a change. So if I can do it, others can too. So I'm hoping to help you today with some of the research that Eco-America and others have done to really help you in your wonderful work that you're doing tomorrow and going forward, and to help you be a little more effective in your communications. So I'm going to talk today about who to engage on climate, and when we say engage, we mean to not only communicate, but invite participation and give permission, and also how to open and hold the conversation. Ed's going to give you a lot of great research on messaging and what to say, but I'm going to talk to us about how to actually have that conversation in a way that will get people to hear you. So I'm going to start by saying what we want to avoid is being this guy. All of us are very passionate about this issue. That's why you're here. You're motivated to solve it. You have a lot of information. But what has happened with folks in the environmental movements, we've gotten a reputation for having suitcases full of bad news to deliver, and delivering it in a way that scares people. You see the person down on the left is scared into shock, and the person down in the right on the audience is plugging their ears and closing their eyes. So what I hope that I'm going to deliver today are some just communications 101 on how to avoid this stereotype. As Bob noted, we've done a lot of research to help inform our work, and most recently we worked with the folks at Columbia University's Center for Research and Environmental Decisions on the Connecting on Climate Guide. That really brings forth methodology and approach for communications. But we also do deep psychographic work, and that I'm going to be sharing some of that with you today. And really, what is that? It really dives deeper into what motivates people's, their responses to climate. What's underneath that? And when we do this research, not only do we ask 270 questions, only a third of them are about climate, because people care about other things. They care about family, they care about community. And so what we're able to do with our research is to tie those things together and see and find pathways in for people to connect on the issue. So to start, who to engage on climate? First, to engage your peers. As we know, not enough people in the health field are engaged on this issue, and as you've heard many times today, your trusted leadership is needed sorely. So the more that you can get your peers involved, the better. Next is patients and the public. People need to hear from you. They're looking to you for guidance. And lastly, local and national policymakers. And as Gary Cohen mentioned, it's not just sort of hearing from you on the impacts of climate, but also participating in the design of those solutions. So you might look at this and say, well, geez, Meighen, that's everybody in America, and it's true. No small task, guys. And someone last night said that social change is not a project, it's a life journey. And so thank you for making this your lifestyle, your life journey. And as also others mentioned, it's important in engaging others to collaborate with each other. There's many great organizations in the room who are doing this work. PSR, Healthcare Without Harm, U.S. Climate and Health Alliance, Trust for America Health, NACCHO. There's so many organizations that are involved in this. Work with them, work with each other, because it really only increases leverage and scale when you do so. And of course, Bob mentioned what we're doing at Eco-America with our Momentus initiative, and this is also where you can collaborate with not only other health leaders, but folks from other sectors in a collaborative effort for collective action. So what I'm going to go over today is taken from our Communicating on Climate 13 steps. There's some in the back, and you can download these online. But really what this is a process for opening the conversation and getting people to hear your message. The most important thing here is that sequence matters. And that's why I particularly frame it as opening the conversation. You really need to prime people to hear your message. We know this from being marketers, but we also work with a lot of neuroscientists and other social scientists that really tell us that people have to really get warmed up to hear what you have to say about climate, because it opens their brain, it opens their neural pathways to hear what you have to say next. First is about starting with people and staying with people. This means that wherever you're communicating, whether it's a speech, in an email, a letter, you name it, to do a bit of homework on who might be your audience. When you understand what they care about and you acknowledge what they care about and you acknowledge them, it helps to build rapport. So it's important to open with your audience and to refer to them often during your communication. The next is connecting on common values, and this is really not only about celebrating the common values of the people you're communicating with, but showing how you personally connect in with them. Because, as was stated earlier today, you're people too, and your audience needs to know that you're human, you care about them, because you relate to them, because when they feel that, they will actually listen to you more and be more motivated by what you have to say. So what are some broadly resonant American values? We know from our research that there are several that people feel that they themselves in America, can make small steps to make the world better. So this idea of exceptionalism and compassion for those who are suffering, and people can be the solution. There's a lot of that kind of positive energy that people resonate with. They also feel a responsibility to do something about climate change, a personal responsibility. They think the EPA has a responsibility, that companies that pollute. And most relevant to you all is this personal right to a clean environment for all. So those concepts of clean drinking water, clean air, that all people hold those in high value, and that is attributed to the work that a lot of you have done in the room. Also, community is very important. As folks lose a little bit of faith on the national level, they've come more and more down to really valuing their community and feeling there's hope and the ability to make progress in their community. And of course, family, and specifically family. Of course, people value their kids. How many of us have kids? A lot of us. Prolific group. But more of us have family. And so it's important to start with family and to use that family frame to bring more people into the group. This is my family. I have tweens, if you haven't noticed by this photo. Their values are changing daily, and what I do know is that they don't value taking a first day of school picture. So now that we've built your rapport, first steps, connecting with them, starting with people. Now that we've built some rapport with our audience, it's time to bridge into talking about climate change. How do you do that? Well, you have to acknowledge that the folks in the room or the folks that are reading your communication might not be 100% on the same page with you around climate. So you have to give space. You have to give room to them to allow for differences of opinion. And we call this acknowledging ambivalence. Acknowledging that they have a lot of priorities on their plate, whether it's their family or they're trying to have a decent living wage or other of their concerns, that they might have other priorities and demands in their life, and to share with them and acknowledge that and share that with them. It also means acknowledging them and perhaps talking about your own experience. It also could mean helping them understand and work through their ambivalence by telling what you can call a conversion story. Like I did it when I first got up here and talked about how I went from my corporate existence into doing nonprofit work. A couple of folks that are to be mindful of out there, these are the Keeping Up with the Joneses. They have, speaking of a lot of priorities, these folks have a lot on their plates. I shop for their 4 a.m. They're a group out there when you're speaking with the public to be mindful of. If you talk about sacrifice, they will shut off. So it's important to talk about benefits and of solutions, and I'll talk about more of that in a minute. It's also important to, again, in this whole conversation about being human and connecting with your audience, to be mindful that sometimes climate change, people perceive that talking about or concern from climate change can feel like the elite folks are taking care of that, and they feel alienated from it. So just another point about the importance of building rapport with your audience to show that you're human too. Next is about scaling from personal to planet. So people need to understand, and I think some folks have talked about this already, that climate change does impact them and impact their health in particular. They also need to understand the scale of it to understand that this is an important issue. But it's not just about the impacts. And in fact, we need to be a little bit easy, particularly with the general public, on talking about the impacts of climate change. They need to know. But you can't have the laundry list of all the impacts, or we'll fall into the trap of the this guy image, right? What's more important about the scaling on the personal planet is about the solutions and the benefits. People need to know that there are solutions, that they're readily accessible, that they need their support in order to move forward, but that they're there. And that they need to understand the personal benefit, and in the case of the folks in the room, the personal health benefits of these solutions. We found in our research that benefits are essential for action on climate. So people will not be motivated on solutions until they hear the benefits. Cannot stress that enough. To the next point, number 5, inspire and empower. This goes along the lines of focusing on the solutions, selling the benefits. And for those folks who are still on the fence, what we found that preparedness can really help motivate those folks. So even if they can't get on board with the idea of a carbon tax, we can talk about preparing for the impacts, preparing for the health impacts, preparing our cities for climate change, and it can help bring them on and in fact open the door to mitigative solutions as well. The next on the list is one powerful fact from a trusted messenger. This is really about sort of citing the work that you do, CDC, Lancet, and others. When people hear a third-party trusted messenger with one important fact, like the 10 hottest years on record kind of fact, then it really helps to kind of give a visual in their mind and have a third-party validation. And the next one is a little bit tricky, and this really mostly applies to general public, but it can also apply to the folks you're going to be speaking to tomorrow as well. And that is to focus on facts and be mindful of how you talk about the science. You're all from the science field, and when you're talking to each other and you're talking to scientists, of course, talk about the science. When you're talking to Congress, talk about the science, but be mindful about it, because there's, the opposition has done a great job of sort of using science as a signal for debate. What is not debatable is what people can see with their own eyes, the facts, the impacts that are happening. And so being able to describe, and that's the next point, is describing versus labeling is very important to help give people sort of the causal impact relations of climate change, and to avoid the jargon that caused that triggering of the divisiveness. And lastly, message discipline is critical. Ed will say this, anyone who does communications will say this. Simple messages repeated often across multiple communications is very important. So the extent that we can all get on the same page on our message that Ed will be sharing is important too. So not only in your own communications, but across collaborations and across the sector. So hopefully I've shown you don't have to be this guy. There are ways and easy steps to avoid being this guy. I want to just give you the URL for our research. There's a lot there, and let you know we're going to be also collaborating with Meighen on in this room on some messaging and communications guides coming out to supplement what Ed is about to share with you. And to really just thank you. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing.